Welcome to the show. Today, we're talking about microplastics. You probably remember the big Starbucks debacle over removing plastic straws due to microplastics and dumb lid designs used to replace the straws, but those just made more microplastics. While the intention was good, they may not have thought it all out properly. But they did get the conversation started globally about plastic straws and microplastics. So, thanks? This really is an important conversation. But before I start saying things that I don't really know, let me reach out for some help. Hey, Mr. Earth Guy, are you there?
Hey Jonathan, yep, I'm here. Thanks for having me on this week's episode. It's a real pleasure to be here, and I hope your viewers learn something interesting today.
Well, I'm sure they will. I mean, after all, that's why I called you in.
This is a strange place you have here. I mean, it's just sort of empty.
It's called minimalism, okay? Anyway, what can you tell us about microplastics?
So ever since the rise of plastics since the early 1900s, it's really revolutionized the way we live as a species. We're able to mold, extrude, press, and make any object design that we like, and it's really changed the way we've lived for the last 100+ years.
So plastics essentially replaced the materials such as steel and aluminum, which would have taken longer to mine and create?
Exactly. So the usability and the durability of plastics meant that we've slowly replaced most of our commercial and household goods using different forms of this new polymer-based plastic material.
So true. It's hard to imagine a world without plastic.
So now we fast forward 100 years and we find ourselves in quite a situation. We've been producing plastics on a massive scale for the last 100 years. And now we're struggling to know what to do with the waste. Quite frankly, we are now damaging and polluting our planet, both in the oceans and the subsurface and on surface, to such an extent where it's actually finding its way into the food chains of the animals that we eat. And in some aspects, it's quite irreversible now, and we now need to find ways to fix the problem.
What do you mean when you say irreversible? Are we stuck?
Well, humans have altered the geomorphology of the Earth to such an extent where researchers are starting to see whether we should call the new time period that we live in the Anthropocene.
Wait. So we are no longer in Holocene?
Well, there's still an ongoing debate since 2016 where researchers are making their case claiming that we should be in a new time period based off the fact that we've changed the Earth so much. And going back to plastics, that's one of the reasons why I'm here in today's video. It's to talk about a form of plastic known as microplastics. So microplastics are small pieces of plastic which are no longer than 5mm in length. Most of the time, they're a lot smaller that we can't even discern them with our own eyes from sand grains. Microplastics usually come from the breakdown or destruction of macroplastics, if you want to call them that, either through our own abrasive recycling processes or through the natural breakdown of plastics in the oceans through means of wave action and biodegradation. Another type of microplastic is the microbead. Now, microbeads are even smaller than the average microplastic. They are actually found in health and beauty products such as toothpaste and exfoliation skin cleansing products, and are so fine that you normally get through most filtering systems, which means they usually find their way to the oceans, into the guts of organisms and fish and other species which rely on food of that size. And while there's been a lot of talk in the news and communities about the dangers of microplastics over the last 5 to 10 years, we've only ever thought of microplastics ending up in the guts and stomachs of fish because they're the pictures you normally see on the news or on the internet. Now, one of the things we have never really spoken about is how plastics may be making their way into the oceans and being stored in organisms. Now, however, we're starting to see that plastics may be used as building materials in the oceans.
Wait. As in brick and mortar type building materials?
Yeah, pretty much. In a brand new paper that I recently read, they observed that there was less microplastic concentrations in the oceans and shallow marine areas than there was plastics going into the oceans. So naturally that made them ask the question, is there a sink or some sort of natural concentration where these plastics are being held? And it's through experimentation and observation that they found that reef building corals, so these are the ones such as the Great Barrier Reef, the ones that make the largest organisms in the world, they are actually incorporating plastics into their skeletons as a means to help them grow. Now, whether that is by chance or whether it is simply because the microplastics were in the water at the time, we're still in the process of figuring out whether there is long-term harm or long-term benefit for these corals doing this. Because if we have hundreds of millions of tons of plastics in the oceans and the corals are slowly taking up part of that weight and incorporating it as a long-term storage option, then that could be helpful for the rest of the marine life. So whether the corals are helping or not, it's always important to make sure we're recycling and being as pollution-free as possible. So next time you have a plastic bottle, make sure you put that in the recycling bin to look after the planet.
Whoa, how did you do that? Don't we need to worry about like international shipping regulations on food items? Anyway, I'm going to toss this into my recycling bin before the FDA hears about this. I want to thank Mr. Earth Guy again for joining me today and giving some rather depressing but very helpful information about microplastics. Be sure to follow him on TikTok at Mr. Earth Guy. You'll find a link down in the description to learn about a fascinating new way of dealing with these microplastics. Be sure to watch this video here. And as always, thanks for watching, and what did you learn today?